Okay, let's move to the second module we had half completed. Now, what we had done till now, let me just give you a brief idea about it. We have discussed various long-term sources of finance, their features we have discussed, their advantages, disadvantages from a company's perspective were discussed in a very extensive manner. Namely, if I give you equity was discussed in a detailed manner, preference capital was discussed in a detailed manner, loans and borrowings were debentures were discussed as well, and reserves and surpluses were also discussed in a great detail. Today, I will take you to the cost of finance. There are a few other sources of finance as well pending to be done, but that will be taken later on. Those sources of finance are for a short frame of time or for some specific purposes. So I'll take you that in a one session. But before that, there is a need to take the cost of finance. I guess someone's mic is unmute. Because of that, other people may not be able to get your voice properly. So if anyone's mic is unmute, can you just mute it? I guess. Okay. Thank you so much. If anyone's mic is unmute, please unmute it. Sorry, mute it. Sorry. Okay, let's move ahead. So we were there into the sources of finance till now. Now we'll go to the cost of finance. And the first source of finance we had discussed was the equity, a very important source of finance. When it comes to a long-term financing, equity is the most preferred source of finance, obviously, because that's what makes a person owner of a company. So if anyone want to take the ownership of the company, they will have to take the equity share of that company. So majority of the startups nowadays are coming up in a company organization format. No one is preferring to be in a partnership firm or association of person or some other form, sole proprietorship or some other thing. You know, company is a very famous business organization for structure nowadays. Now let's go to the cost of equity. Now my friends, we are thinking from the perspective of the company that you people are aware about. Now, what can be a cost for a company as far as the equity is concerned? Try to understand it. Equity shareholders might be many in numbers if it is a publicly listed company. If some giant companies, corporations are there, then there many number of shares are listed, and those shares are on a daily basis traded from one investor to another investor, right? What can be a cost for a company as far as the equity is concerned? My friends, first we'll have to understand that what can be the expectations of the equity shareholders. That may be a cost to the company. Expectations of the equity shareholder while they are investing into equity might be of two types. One is the increment in market price if the shares are publicly traded, and another expectation which they may have is the dividend amount. Either the company will have to give the dividend, or the company will have to increase the market price. Now, how company can increase the market price? Obviously by improving its fundamentals, improving its sales, improving its future prospects, improving its management. By doing this fundamental exercises, the company becomes stronger financially and the market price may get up. We are right now finding the expectations of the shareholders. How can we find that expectation? That's what the fundamental question is. So various financial experts started making some models to know what could be the expectations of the shareholders from a company. So one of the very famous models was the CAPM model, that is also called as the capital asset pricing model. Now, what is the fundamental understanding behind this CAPM model? It's a very, very systematic process taking into account the investor's psychology and expectations. I'm asking a very simple question to you, my friend. You are investing in a stock market which involves various types of risk. The risk of non-payment of dividend, the risk of decrease in the market price, the risk of non-payment of capital at the time of shutdown of company. Company may pay the dividend to you, company may not pay the dividend to you. When the company will be shut down, at that time company may distribute some amount of assets to you, company may not distribute the some amount of assets to you. You take so many risks. What shall be your minimum rate of return expectations? Can someone tell me? My question is very simple. What is the minimum rate of expectations you expect as a shareholder if you invest in the shares from a company? You may convey that to me by unmuting yourself. You may just put the message in a chat box, whatever the way feasible to you. Is there any message related to that? See, so a very minimum basic expectation you have is the risk-free rate. Now, some people would be like, sir, what is that risk-free rate? Now you invest in some of the government bonds, you invest in some of the fixed deposits, which gives you some percentage rate of return without taking any considerable amount of risk. Nowadays, fixed deposits are no more safe assets, especially after the fiasco we have seen in the Yes Bank. People invested in the Yes Bank's fixed deposits, and we could see that people couldn't recover back their fixed deposit amounts because Yes Bank filed for the bankruptcy. But still, majorly if you consider, fixed deposits gives you some fixed percentage rate of return without the considerable amount of risk. That's why they may also be called as the risk-free security. But government bonds issued by the governments of respective countries, they are one of the safest investment avenues when it comes to the risk. Now, if the government issues some bonds to the public at large, and you people as a public at large invest in the government bonds, can government go bankrupt? Will government say no to you that we do not have the money, will not be able to pay you? So risk of default, risk of non-payment of interest, this everything is eliminated if you invest in the government bonds. So risk-free rate may be taken as the government bonds, whatever the rate of expectation you expect from a government bonds, say 7%. Then you should also get a premium, some premium, because you are taking the risk. Now that is also called as the risk premium. Risk premium. Now what can be the risk premium expectations? Now I will see that what is the overall return of equity market. Now equity market may be taken as a Nifty, which is the stock market index of India. It can also be the Sensex. It can also be some other portfolio too. Let me take a Nifty's return, which I consider is the overall return of the equity market. I am naming it as the return from market. Return from the equity market overall minus the risk-free rate. That is a risk premium that you should get because you have taken the risk, which is also called as the excess return over and above the risk-free rate. But that is for the market. Risk return from the market is called as the RM in this case. Risk-free rate is denoted by RF. You get a risk premium because you take some risk in the company. Now that risk premium expectations should not be same from each and every company, right? It will differ. You cannot expect the same from Chandulal Limited and Reliance Industries Limited. You cannot expect same from ICICI and HDFC. Every company's fundamentals are different. Every company's dynamics are different. So we had seen one indicator of the risk right in our earlier sessions. That was the beta of company. Beta of company, that you multiply this risk premium with the beta of that company, then you will get the company specific premium you should get. So the formula looks like this: risk-free rate plus beta of the company in bracket return from market minus risk-free rate. Now, what is this beta? Beta tells you that how historically your company was sensitive to the market. If the beta of company is say 1.2, that tells you that if the market is giving you 1% return, that how much percentage return you can expect from a company, 1.2. If market will move by 1%, this company's stock will move by 1.2%. Similarly, in the downtrend as well, if the market will go down by 1%, this company's stock will go down by 1.2%. So market beta is always considered as 1. Market is moving by 1. A very simple layman kinda understanding. So some of the companies might be very stable in nature, whose beta will be very low. Say 0.6 is their beta. Again, a very simple interpretation of this 0.6 is, if entire market is moving up or down by 1%, then this company's share will go up or down by 0.6%. So you multiply that beta with the risk premium and you add the risk-free rate into it. So you get the expected rate of return of the equity shareholders. That's what rationally any investor should expect from a company. This is just a one model. There may be various other models as well. We are discussing one model right now. Very famous among the finance experts, widely followed as well by the industry experts to know their weight overall cost of finance. I hope that sounds clear to everyone now. That's the cost of equity by CAPM model. Is there any query, any questions related to CAPM model? If you couldn't get this formula well, let me know. Try to understand it conceptually, logically. If you are stuck anywhere, let me know. I'm there with you. Or else, may I have a confirmation through the chat box that you have got this? Yes, one answer was given by Miss Urja that she should expect a minimum rate of return given by a government security. Very true, Miss Urja. Yes, Mr. Vishal, I'll definitely give you the example of this. I'll definitely give you the example of this. Before that, I'll discuss conceptually all other methods and then I'll take the examples of each and every one. We are going to see that, don't worry. Okay, then there was another method which is quite similar to the CAPM model, where the risk-free rate is replaced by a yield on long-term bonds. Now, long-term bonds are basically the bonds issued by the corporates or by the government institutions for the specific purposes. You people see that some highways are being constructed, So if the National Highway Authority wants to raise the money from a public, then what they will do, they will issue the bond certificate to the public at large. And the people like you and me may invest in that bond, maybe having the denomination of 1000 rupees, 100 rupees or so. So basically this company takes the loans and borrowings from the people at large in terms of bonds. Now they may be issued by the corporates as well. So instead of taking the risk-free rate, some experts suggest that why not to take the yield from a long-term bonds? When I say yield, that means a return. In a very simple language, it's a return. So whatever the return you get from a long-term bonds, let's take it as the risk-free rate. Now, risk-free rate was basically undefined in this capital asset pricing model. Which rate you will take the risk-free rate? It may be a government security, it may be a fixed deposit in some of the countries, it may be a return from some, say, insurance plans, or it may be a return from, say, saving deposits. But some experts suggest that investors will look to the bonds, bonds. Now, this method can be followed if there is no default risk related to the bonds. Bonds are very risk-freely traded. If that assumption stands true, then only this method may be more appropriate to be used. But if there are some political uncertainties, economic uncertainties, some problems going on in a country, companies facing some liquidity crisis, at that point of time, the yield from a long-term bond may not be a risk-free. That means they may involve a significant percentage of a risk, significant amount of risk. If the entire economy, like you take the example of Zimbabwe, some of the countries are going through some economic turmoil. You take the example of Greece. In the entire Europe, the Greece is struggling very hard economically. In that case, the long-term bonds may not be a risk-free asset for the investors, But if the countries are very sound, like the United States of America, economically very powerful, economically having the good indicators and fundamentals, in that case, the yield from a long-term bond may be taken as the risk-free rate. So it's basically the same. In CAPM, you used to put RF plus beta of a company in bracket RM minus RF, right? So instead of RF, you will use the long-term yield. So yield on bond, that is your bare minimum expectations from the equity share, plus beta of a company in bracket return from a market. RM stands for a return from a market minus risk-free rate again. Now I am using this RM. RM is the overall return from the equity market. So that's a second method. उसका ही भाई है, CAPM का ही भाई है, कुछ नहीं है. Instead of RF, you are using the yield on bond. As simple as that. Well, let's move to a third method, which is again a very famous among the financial experts. First is the CAPM, another one is this dividend growth model. These two methods are widely followed. Long-term bond yield and the fourth method we are going to see. These two methods are not very widely used. Third one. Now we are right now thinking from a perspective of the company. Do not forget that. We want to see that what may be a cost for a company as far as the equity share capital is concerned. So third one is that, say, try to understand. This will take some time. I'm taking you to one Excel file to make you understand in a better way. Someone was asking me for the practical example. We have taken it. Huh? Don't worry, it will be taken in some time. Third method is the dividend growth model. Now say there are two expectations of the shareholders from a company. One is to get the dividend, another one is to get the increment in market price. So my friends say they have invested at 100 rupees in one stock. And last time around, you had paid the dividend of 5 rupees per share from a company. Then their investment was 100. You have given 5 rupees per share as a dividend. Then per share dividend expectation rate. Try to think from the shareholders' point of view. Their investment is 100 and they have got last year 5 rupees of dividend. So at least the shareholders will expect last year's dividend to survive. You know that last time you had paid 5 rupees out of 100 rupees of investment I had made. So that is the percentage expectations I have kept on you. 5 divided by 100. Plus I require some growth rate. Because see, I also want to get some growth rate, no? Now, how do we find this growth rate? And that's where some logical understanding is required. So the formula looks like D1, current year's dividend, divided by P0, the price of equity share, plus G. That is considered to be my cost of equity. Cost of equity is also denoted by the letters KE. So KE equal to D1 divided by P0 plus G. D1 stands for the dividend per share of current year, divided by the P0, which is the investment of equity shareholder, basically the market price of equity, market price of equity share, plus some growth rate. Now here is where the question arises, sir, what should be this growth rate? Now, before I take you to this, you should first understand this format, which is also going to be very useful to you in various other calculations of finance. See, you will always use this format. Please put it in the back of your mind. You may also write and take a note of it. There is a sales amount which company does, right? From the sales amount, you reduce all the variable cost. Now, variable costs are those kind of costs which are directly related to the level of output. So if you increase your output, this cost will also get increased. If you decrease your output, this cost will also reduce. These are called as the variable cost. You might have studied that in your accounting. So you reduce that, you get the contribution. From a contribution, you reduce the fixed costs. Fixed cost except interest, because two fixed costs are further bifurcated into two parts. You know, one is the financial fixed cost, another one is the operating fixed costs. So this cost do not get changed with the level of output. If I give you the example, say the rent of the premises. If you have taken one premises at rent, then whatever your level of output will be, whether you generate 20,000 units or 40,000 units or 60,000 units, rent will remain constant at whatever the amount you have decided, right? Similarly, when you have taken the loans and borrowings from people, on that you pay the interest. That interest percentage and the interest amount also remain constant over a period of time, irrespective of your amount of sales. Whatever the amount of sales you do, interest you will have to bear at any cost. So fixed cost except interest. So you reduce that, you get EBIT. EBIT can also be called as earning before interest and tax. Now from that, my friends, you reduce the interest. Now why I have done two bifurcation of all the fixed costs, you will come to know once I'll take you to some other concepts of finance. So you reduce the interest, you get the earning before tax, can also be called as the profit before tax. From that, you pay the tax to the government. So there will be a tax percentage which will be charged on the earning before tax, say 30%, 20%, 40%, whatever the case it may be. So you get profit after tax. Now from profit after tax, the first preference to receive the dividend is of the preference shareholders, because that's what we have studied in the source of finance, right? That preference shareholders gets the first priority when it comes to the dividend. So say the preference dividend you have paid is some amount, you reduce that, so you get the earning available for equity, earning for equity, because now this money, whatever the left, no, may be distributed to the equity shareholders. So my friend, you reduce the preference dividend, you reach to the earning for equity. Now you divide a number of equity shares by whatever the number of equity shares you have, then you get the earning per share. Earning per share. Now from the earning per share, you have two options, whether to pay the dividend or not to pay the dividend. Say the earning per share is 10 rupees per share. From that, you decide to pay 5 rupees as dividend, and 5 rupees are kept as reserves and surplus. That means this money will be transferred in the financial statements as a reserved and surplus, can also be called as the retained earnings. So what is the dividend payout ratio from this? So dividend payout ratio equal to dividend per share divided by EPS. So from 10 rupees you had to be distributed to the equity shareholders, you have just distributed 5 rupees as a dividend. So you have paid 50% of your EPS as a dividend, right? So dividend payout ratio is 50%. 5 divided by 10. So that's 50%. I hope this format looks pretty clear to everyone. Please look at it again. I'm repeating that so that you do not get confused. From sales, you reduce the variable cost, you get contribution. From contribution, you reduce the fixed costs, except the interest. So you get EBIT. EBIT stands for earning before interest and tax. Then you reduce the interest, you get the EBT, can be called as the earning before tax. From that, you pay the amount of tax to the government of India or to a government of any country where you are operating. You get profit after tax. From that, the first right to get the dividend is of the preference shareholders. Now, whatever the money left is called as the earning for equity. You divide that earning by number of equity shares. You get earning per share. Now, how do you evaluate the dividend payout ratio? Dividend per share divided by EPS, that is also called as the dividend payout ratio. Right? Till this point of time, everyone should be clear. Now, let's go to that method. Now, here in this method, D1 divided by P0 plus G was there, right? Now, what is this G, growth rate? How much growth rate any shareholder will expect from a company? Now, that growth rate expectation is dependent on the amount you distribute as a dividend, or I may say your dividend payout ratio. How? Let's try to understand it very logically. Please put the focus over here. So my friends, whatever the EPS, earning per share, which company earns, no, the ultimate right over those EPS, earning per share, is of equity shareholders. Now, you may not pay the equity shareholders some amount of dividend, but you are keeping that as a reserves and surpluses. Equity shareholders will be like, it's okay, fine. You keep this money with you. But see, you will be earning some percentage of return from this money which you are keeping aside, for your future expansion and maintenance purposes. Whatever the money which company is keeping aside for its future expansion purposes, company will grow that money, right? Company is not going to keep it idle. So the growth rate expectations should be the retention ratio multiplied by ROI of company. I'm explaining that, do not worry. Retention ratio stands for 1 minus dividend payout ratio. That means whatever the percentage of the money which company have kept aside as reserves and surpluses. So let's go to that example we had taken. So out of 10 rupees, 5 rupees was distributed as a dividend, and rest 5 rupees was kept by a company as a reserves and surplus. So that rest 5 rupees can also be called as the retention ratio. So 5 divided by 10, retention ratio will be 50%. Let's take another example. Say 10 rupees is there, EPS, and you pay 4 rupees as dividend. Then dividend payout ratio is 40% and retention ratio is 60%. So you can also write it like 1 minus dividend payout ratio is a retention ratio. Well, a very simple understanding of the retention ratio is that the money is kept by a company. Now, if I am a shareholder, I would be like, oh company, इधर आओ इधर आओ इधर आओ, चलो ठीक है, तो मेरा पैसा जो मुझे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना चाहिए, that money you are keeping with you, okay, I don't have any problem. But see, that money which you are keeping aside in your company, you are not going to keep that idle. Either you will use it in your business or you will invest it somewhere into some investment avenues, or you will invest in some other business. Then what is your expected rate of return from that investment? At least that much of growth rate I should have on my dividends. So entire EPS, I as a shareholder have a right to get. You are not giving me the dividend, it's okay, fine, chalo, you have got that right, but you are keeping that with you, no? Then if you earn some percentage from that, at least that much of growth rate I should expect from a company in my dividends. So right now I am getting the dividend of say 5 rupees on my investment of 100, but I expect some growth rate. What is that growth rate? That retention ratio multiplied by ROI. ROI stands for the rate of investment, return on investment by a company. So if the company invests my funds somewhere in their business, on that, whatever the return they get, no, that much of growth rate I expect. A very logical and rationally sound argument. Fine. Company had two options. Company do not distribute the dividend. Company keeps some amount of money with them. It's okay, fine, you keep it. But you are growing that money. And if you grow that money, then whatever the return you get from that money, at least that much of growth rate you should give me, as simple as that. So that is the third model, D1 divided by P0 plus G. And the G stands for the retention rate multiplied by return on investment. Here it's return on equity. So whatever the case it may be given to you in the question, that you will multiply. In majority of the circumstances, you will get ROI. Retention rate multiplied by ROI, as simple as that. That's my growth rate, and that is over and above the dividend expectations. So that will be the expectations of the equity shareholder in a total, KE. That will be a cost for a company, because company will have to either pay the dividend to satisfy their expectations, or company will have to take the market price to such extent so that, you know, the shareholders' expectations are satisfied. So may I have a confirmation as far as the logical understanding of the third model is concerned? All of you, may I have a confirmation through the chat box, please? Received it from Mr. Mohit, Mr. Dhaval, Miss Urja as well. Others, I'm expecting the very active interactions. Yes, Mr. Vishal, G is in a percentage. G will be in a percentage. Very true. From Mr. Harsh as well as from Mr. Neve, I have received it. Good. So three models of cost of equity are done. Let's go to a very final model, that is the earning price ratio approach. So here in this case, my friends, you do not put whether you have distributed some amount of money or not, or you don't do such calculations, because some financial experts believes that whatever the EPS is there, no, that EPS belongs to the equity shareholder. Whether you distribute as a dividend or you do not distribute as a dividend, you take just entire EPS. So here the growth rate and everything does not take place. It is just basically EPS divided by my market price multiplied by 100. So I get the cost of equity. EPS stands for the earning per share. You people have got that, right? Just now we have seen the one format. So EPS is the amount available to the equity shareholders after making the payment to preference shareholders and everyone. And that amount is divided by the number of equity shares. You get the EPS. You'll get it once we'll solve some practical examples of it. I'm also going to take you to the rate of return of Reliance Industries Limited. We'll see that personally. Is it clear till now? So here growth rate and everything. See, growth rate and everything will take into account or will come into a picture only if there will be some retention ratio or some dividend payout ratio or something. But here in this case, if you take entire EPS as the earning for equity shareholders, then growth rate and everything will not come into picture only. You just expect some percentage of the increment in the EPS. So you find the expected EPS for the next year divided by the price of the market price of the share. You get the cost of equity. Okay, let's go to some examples now so that you get it in a better way. Good. So you may just take a snap of this. Let's take the first example. I'm anyway going to share this with you only, but you may take a snap of it for your future references. Don't worry, it won't be taking more than 3 to 4 minutes. Find the cost of equity from the following details of the Vittal TD Limited by a CAPM approach and by dividend yield approach. You have got the earnings of company, 40 lakhs. Number of shares, equity shares are 3,50,000. Dividend per share you distribute 7.5 rupees. Rate of return on investment is 12%. Market price of the equity share is 140. Return on risk-free government bonds is 9%. beta of company is 1.8 and return from a market is 15%. So let's do it as per the CAPM model first, and then we'll go to dividend yield model. So as per the CAPM, the KE stands for the cost of equity equal to the risk-free rate plus beta of company in bracket market return minus risk-free rate. This is the formula we have seen, right? So sir, risk-free rate is how much? The return on the risk-free government bonds is how much? 9%. Can also be called as the risk-free rate. So can be written like 0.09 plus beta. So beta, you people are aware that what is the meaning of that beta? If the entire market gives you 1% return, then this company will give you 1.8% return. Now, how do we come to know about it? We have done some historical calculations. So we'll take the beta calculation example as well in the next session. But a very simple understanding, it is the sensitivity of a company in comparison to the entire market. So beta is 1.8 multiplied by, acha, if you have done your statistics, no, then this beta is nothing but the regression coefficient. You follow the simple linear regression formula. That regression coefficient formula is there. No, that is nothing but the beta. Okay. Market return is 15%. So I'm writing 0.15 minus risk-free rate is 0.09. So let's solve this. 0.09 multiplied by 1.8 multiplied by 0.06. So may I have an answer from students? What do you get finally in the chat box? Mr. Mohit is saying 0.198. 0.198 we have got. Others may please verify. That does not mean I have a trust issue with Mohit, but बाकी सब लोगों भी करे, इसलिए मैंने verify बोला. Mohit would be like, sir, verify मतलब मेरे ऊपर trust नहीं है, मैं कुछ गलत करूंगा? नहीं नहीं बेटा, तुम सही कर रहे हो. Are all getting the same answer? Let's see that. Okay, Ms. Urja is also getting the same answer. Fine. So you can also write it like 19.8% if you divide it by, if you multiply it by 100. So that's as per the CAPM. Let's find it as per the dividend yield model. So let's first write the formula. KE equal to D1 divided by P0 plus G. D1 stands for the expected per share dividend of this year, including the growth rate of this year, you know. So you say if you have the dividend of the last year, then dividend of the last year will be taken as D0. But you expect some growth rate of the current year as well. So D1 is for the expected dividend on this year. And if last year's dividend is given to you, then this year's growth rate you will be adding. But if this year's dividend is given to you, then it will straight away be taken as D1. So let's see that. Sir, we do not have any dividend per share. हाँ, है कि नहीं है? यहाँ है dividend per share. So no terminology is used like, you know, it's last year's or current year. So we assume that it's the expected of current year. So 7.5 dividend per share divided by the market price of the share. So sir, market price of the share is given how much? 140. So I'm dividing it by 140 plus G. Now for G, we'll have to do some calculations. So let's go to that entire format. Now in that format, directly earnings of the company is given to us. So we won't have to do entire format. We may directly start it with the earnings of the company. So working note number 1, I'm writing earnings of company. Sir, how much? 40 lakhs rupees. Then Do we have any preference capital? No, there is nothing given related to preference share capital, so there won't be preference dividend. So this earning available to equity shareholder may be divided by the number of equity shares. So you get the EPS. So number of equity shares are how many? Let's see that. Sir, that is 3,50,000. 3,50,000. So you divide it, you get the EPS. How much you get it? Let's see that. So that comes out at 11.4286. Now from that, how much dividend you have paid? Sir, the dividend per share is 7.5. So I can also find the dividend payout ratio now. So dividend payout ratio equal to 7.5 divided by 11.4286. 7.5 divided by 11.4286. So you get 0.6563 as the dividend payout ratio. Can also be called as 65.63%. Now we may also find the retention ratio, which is 1 minus dividend payout ratio. So retention ratio equal to 1 minus dividend payout ratio. So equal to 1 minus 0.6563. So how much we get? Let's see that. We get 0.3437. So we can find the growth rate now. So growth rate का formula क्या था याद करो. Retention ratio multiplied by return of investment by company. This everything is in a percentage. So growth rate will also be in a percentage as it was stated by Mr. Jay. So retention ratio is how much? 0.3437 multiplied by the return of investment by a company. So how much company will be earning on its investment? 12%. So I'm multiplying that by 0.12. We are right now putting every calculations in decimal. So whatever you get, that will be the KE as per the dividend yield model. So that I'm keeping up to you. Please put your enrollment number as a mark of your attendance for the day, because you will have this second lecture as well now. In the next session, we'll do this regression coefficient. One more announcement, that today's BRM session will be of FM. So I guess at 10:55, you have got the BRM session. That will be taken as the financial management session. I had a word with Meeta ma'am. I'm also putting that in a WhatsApp group. Please put your enrollment number as a mark of your attendance. That's it from my side. Bye-bye. Take care. Sayonara. And enjoy your day. See you all again in the BRM session.